All right, we made it back. It's Fast Cars, Fast Money. We're talking about the Xfinity Series at Talladega. Sorry for not being around last handful of weeks. It's been a little bit crazy, a little busy with personal life stuff, so haven't got as many videos out that I've wanted to, but luckily NASCAR did us a little bit of a favor this weekend with having qualifying, the day prior to the race. So I always appreciate that. Hopefully we can do a little bit more of that in the future. But getting into this race, how can you help us really? If you like, comment, share, retweet our content, it allows us to reach more people. If you're new here, subscribing to the channel, ultimately helps us. It's always been our goal to get up to 1,000. Slowly but surely, we're getting closer to that. If you want access to the spreadsheet, just go over on X. It's at Fast Cars FM. We'll post the spreadsheet there. You can message us questions about lineups. We'll post updates if things change with the starting grid. And then lastly, hey, if you had a good weekend, you want to help us out, you just want to say thanks, throw us a couple dollars here and there. There's a link on the support tab there. So getting to the race preview and strategy, it is a super speedway race. So the phrase you're going to hear all week or all weekend long is going to be stack the back. Now, if you're playing NASCAR DFS, you exactly know what that means. If you don't, it basically just means when you get to these super speedway races, there's a lot of unpredictability. There's a lot of randomness. Sometimes it goes in there trying to predict who's going to lead laps or get fast laps. Sometimes it gets just distributed throughout the field. So what we want to do is really focus on drivers that have place differential upside. You're more concerned about starting position and ownership than anything else. Driver doesn't necessarily, matter as much. Equipment doesn't necessarily matter as much compared to some other weekends that we go to. And salary doesn't matter either. Don't be afraid to leave a good chunk of salary left over when you're building lines. Um, so just kind of keep that stuff in mind. But it's not a guarantee it's going to be a wreck fest either. Like when we get to these super speedway races, the chances of it being a wreck fest are much higher than in any of the other, races that we go to. But we have seen some of these super speedway races either get um, cut short because of rain. That always sucks. Or, sometimes they are clean or sometimes they wreck, but it's not until the last lap and it's not enough, for the drivers in the back to really advance their position. So I am building today with, I believe it's going to be a wreck fest. I believe there's going to be cautions. I could believe drivers are going to have issues. I think drivers are going to wreck out. Even if I don't think those drivers, even if I don't think it's going to be a big wreck fest, a lot of the drivers I'm high on today, I think can still score well regardless, if it's a wreck fest or not. All right. So when you get to the expensive range here, you got the Austin Hill, AJ Allmendinger, Allgaier, Creed, Smith, and Custer. You're going to see I'm low on basically everyone that's starting toward the front of the field. If I think everyone has a good chance of wrecking out and we want to focus on place differential upside, those drivers don't really give us that much upside. Now, yes, Austin Hill has been completely dominant in the Xfinity Series on these track types. It's not surprising that he's on the pole. He's probably going to be the favorite, the contender to win this race. The problem is he's going to carry a lot of ownership. So he starts first. I know he's probably going to be anywhere from he's probably going to have at least have 20% ownership, maybe 18, 22% ownership, something like that. Who knows? Um, but if he wrecks out, he kills your line, and it's not going to be good for you. Versus if you play a driver that starts, like Jeb Burton, for example, it starts 35th. If he wrecks out, you still have a great chance of cashing. It's not going to kill your line by any means. So I just, I think he's going to have Austin Hill. I think he's going to have a good day, but DFS wise, there's just not enough upside, too much risk, and it's a good way to kind of get some leverage on the field. AJ Allmendinger and Justin Allgaier, I'm going to be high on these drivers. So, yes, they don't start super deep in the field, but they're still in good cars and good equipment, and they still give us place differential upside, regardless if it's a wreck fest or not. Especially in the Xfinity Series, there's usually a pretty big gap between the back marker teams and the good teams. There's going to be multiple packs. It's not like the Cup Series where everyone's just kind of together. Um, so I think those drivers can both score well. I'd rather play those types of plays than drivers that start further toward the front of the field. Sheldon Creed starts 10th. Not a ton of upside. I think he's fine. Probably a little bit more of a tournament play. Getting to the 9K range, not really anyone I like here except for Sam Mayer. It was quite a crazy Texas finish at that race last weekend. So I was kind of pulling for Ryan Sieg there. But Mayer was able to pass him there on the last lap and barely get the win. So that was pretty cool finish for Texas. Um, but for this weekend, Herb starts eighth. I think he's a little bit more of a tournament option, kind of like Sheldon Creed. I don't really think he's going to have a lot of ownership. You could kind of take a risk on him if you want. Jesse Love is the other RCR car. It's not surprising that he's starting second. He's going to be up front, probably with Austin Hill leading a lot of laps today. Again, just carries too much risk starting second. Ryan Truex is kind of in the same boat. Starts a little bit too far forward to the front of the field. Kligerman, his car comes out of the RCR shop, so I'm not surprised that he's up there, with Austin Hill and Jesse Love. But again, really just looking at that starting position and trying to project ownership, there's not really a lot of upside for Kligerman in a DFS, standpoint. Taylor Gray, I think, is fine. I think you can kind of throw him into the same boat as Sheldon Creed. I have a little bit more interest in Gray just because he starts a little bit further, toward the rear of not the rear, but a little bit further back in the field. Gives you some place differential upside. He also has a lot of, JGR teammates he can draft with as well, which is kind of a nice advantage that the bigger teams have. Sammy Smith starts fifth, not really a ton of upside there. And then once we get down here, this is really where most of my lines are, going to be quote unquote, built around. You're going to see, all the good cars up there that qualified well. I'm not really super interested in. There's a handful. But once we get to these, mediocre teams or some of these back marker teams, that's really where most of my lines are going to be focusing around. And it might not look the best. It might feel kind of crazy clicking on, 5, 6 of those drivers, but that's really the way that I'm building today. So I really like Brandon Jones. He's going to be popular. He starts 23rd. He's probably in the best equipment of all the drivers that's going to start further in, the second half of the field. So that's going to be a popular play. Can understand if you want to fade him for GPPs, if you understand that, hey, he's going to carry a lot of ownership. I'll just, pivot and play Ryan Sieg, for example. It starts 24th. I don't, maybe Sieg you'll see less ownership than Jones and has relatively the same amount of upside. That's a good way to, pivot off of a popular play. SVG starts 18th. I'm not really sure how many people are going to play him. Again, it's a good car, good equipment. Doesn't have a ton of experience here, but he starts 18th, so there's still a lot of good upside there. And we know, regardless if it's a wreck fest or not, that car is fast enough to maintain with the front pack. Parker Retzlaff starts 21st, kind of right in the middle of the pack there. Good car, a lot of place differential upside. Anthony Alfredo starts 11th, more of a tournament play, kind of just like Sheldon Creed, like we're talking about. He does give you some place differential upside, but not nearly as much as some of these other plays. Jeb Burton's probably going to be the highest owned play today. He starts 35th, in a good car, starting deep in the field. Again, kind of like Brandon Jones. If you're playing tournaments, I understand coming under the field on him ownership wise. Cash games, you're probably going to want to lock him in. Josh Williams starts ninth, kind of like Alfredo, a little bit of upside, not a ton, more of a tournament play. Jordan Anderson, I'm probably going to maybe bump him up to high. I have him at medium for right now. We did see this car run. I believe it was at Daytona, or maybe it was Atlanta. I think it was Atlanta actually. But it was like night and day difference between the other Jordan Anderson cars and this car. Now it is sponsored this weekend, so I think that's going to help. You know, but I'm a little hesitant, to play him, especially at that price, starting 32nd. I'd much rather play some of the other drivers right under him. So I like Matty D, Jeffrey Earnhardt, Jeremy Clements, Kyle Sieg. Like these are all plays that I don't think are going to see a ton of ownership. Maybe Earnhardt will see a good chunk, but I like all of them. They're in decent cars. They start in the second half of the field. They give us place differential upside. Those are the types of plays I really want to build around. Kyle Weatherman starts mid pack. I think he can, kind of go either way. I just like the other drivers. It give me a little bit more upside around him. Brennan Poole, don't mind him, starts 27th, really not too much else you can really say there. Haley Deegan does start deep in the field. She might be popular starting this deep. Sometimes people don't like to play Haley just because she has, doesn't always get the finishes. But starting 31st, I'm going to have a lot of interest there. And then Perkins, Massey, Starr, Bassarella. So Perkins, I don't mind. I kind of think he's not going to see a ton of ownership. So I like him. Mason Massey originally was the DNQ, and then Garrett Smithley had an issue with his roof, so they put Massey in the field. He does start DFL. He's going to be slow, but if it's a wreck fest, he can work out. So I don't mind, the quote unquote ugly plays. David Starr is probably going to see probably going to be one of the lowest owned drivers in the field today, making him a really interesting tournament option if you want to get risky or if you really think this is a wreck fest. Maybe David Starr can get you, a top 15 finish or something, which would be wild. But it's very possible if it is a complete wreck fest today. Bassarella starts 29th, decent car deep in the field. Ryan Ellis starts basically DFL. Like, you really can't lose you any points. So the nice thing about Ellis and these other drivers that start deep, you know, say they start 37th, they finish 28th. It's not a great day, but it's a pretty good day compared to, rostering a driver that starts 11th and then finishes 21st or something, or a driver that starts fourth and wrecks out. So you play Ellis, he wrecks out and he finishes 36th because other cars wreck out before him. He's still scoring you positive points compared to, a driver that wrecks out up front that's just going to completely tank your line and get, -15, -20, -30 points potentially. Now, you don't want those types of plays in your lineup. Joey Gase going to be pretty low owned today. You can kind of make the argument with David Starr if you want to get really aggressive, really risky. You really think this is going to be a wreck fest. Maybe you plug him in a line or two. Blicky starts deep, kind of like Ellis. There's not really a way he can lose you points. Emmerling, again, if you want to be really crazy, really risky, he's probably going to be the lowest owned play today, starting 12th in that equipment being that cheap. Leland Honeyman, I like him. And then I don't mind Dawson Cram as well. So really, all these cars back here, some of these drivers, they aren't in the best equipment. They aren't the best, drivers. But the nice thing is the starting positions. That's really what we want to, hone in on in the ownership. So most of my lines have, these types of plays down here and then kind of sprinkling in some of these high owned or maybe some of the medium owned, drivers up here that are a little bit more expensive. If you're playing tournaments, you can definitely get a little bit riskier, kind of take some risks on some drivers up front. If you're playing cash games, most likely you want most of your drivers starting in the, second half of the field or kind of in the mid-teens on back. So hopefully that's helpful. Probably nothing new that you haven't heard in a previous super speedway race, but that'll do it for our Xfinity Series video. We got the Cup Series qualifying today, so sometime either tonight or early tomorrow morning, we'll get the Cup video recorded. So if you want this spreadsheet, I'm just gonna, once I post this video, I'll post it on our X account at Fast Cars FM. So best of luck today, and catch you tomorrow.